How many of you would like to have Mayor de Blasio's endorsement for you as mayor of New York City? Please raise your hands. Mr. Yang, one.
He's from the W.D. Children's School of Good Government. I want all the money and I want all the votes.
Wednesday night's Democratic primary debate for mayor of New York City. And joining us now, the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio.
Mr. Mayor,
you're back.
Mr. Mayor, it's a tough crowd.
Let me tell you.
This is a very tough crowd.
Oh, that's just another day in New York City. Can we just celebrate that you guys are back in New York City? Everyone together around the table. This is beautiful. This really feels great. This is another symbol, another sign of the comeback in New York City. It really is. And I predict summer of New York City is going to be the most amazing summer.
Summer of love.
Really?
Summer of love. It's going to be. People are going to come from all over the country to this city because this is where it's going to be happening. And I predict a Brooklyn Nets victory.
Oh, wow.
Brooklyn Nets, ladies and gentlemen, national NBA champions. First time a team with the name Brooklyn will win a national championship in over 60 years. There's your prediction for the day.
Okay.
The 1955 Brooklyn Dodgers. What do you think?
Very well could be right. They got a tough series right now against the Bucks, but if they clear that hurdle, they're the odds-on favorite
Brooklyn
to win it
all the way.
So you're telling me the Atlanta Hawks beat the Knicks and now they're going to beat the Nets?
No, no one's beating the Nets. That's what I'm telling you. Let me go over this slowly. No one's beating the Nets.
You don't think so?
No.
You agree with that, Willie?
They got the best talent in the league. I think if they beat the Bucks, they win it all. But this series is tough.
I think we can all just agree and be happy that the Lakers are out and can't win again. But yeah, the Nets are terrific, but the Bucks are really good too. I agree with that. Whoever wins this series will probably be the favorite to win the whole thing.
Yep.
Yankees, Red Sox.
Yes, this weekend.
Big series this weekend. You going to Yankee Stadium?
You know, Joe, I'm busy this week on important official duties.
You stayed away from Yankee
I happen to have a very booked schedule.
Boston.
Yeah.
But I'll go to Citi Field anytime.
Yeah, exactly.
There is no conflict there. God bless.
Okay, let's get serious.
Okay.
Okay, so Scott Stringer was here.
Yeah, he wasn't.
He's not asking for your endorsement. But he said you should clear the subways right now of the homeless. Why don't you do that today?
Okay, look. First of all, let's put things in perspective. This city, after what we went through, has just made a remarkable comeback already. We have beat back COVID in this city. COVID levels 95% lower than they were on January 1st. Yes, it was ground zero. It's now one of the safest places in the country. Most New Yorkers, I can now say a majority of New Yorkers have gotten at least one dose of the vaccine. That effort's growing. So to bring back this city, get the healthcare part right, get the vaccine part right, that's happening.
Right.
Now, on top of that, we got to address some of the long-term problems that this city and every city faces. The way to do that is with what has worked historically, bringing police and community together. That's neighborhood policing that worked for years, drove down crime, created a deeper bond between police and community, and homeless outreach. We've gotten literally thousands of people off the streets in the last 7 years into shelter, kept them in shelter.
So help me out with this, because we've talked, and when I had you on, we always talked about the declining crime numbers. Yeah. Before the pandemic, lowest numbers since the 1950s. They didn't even have records going back to how safe New York City was before the pandemic. But I have heard, again, from New York residents, time and again, while crime rates were extraordinarily low, homelessness has remained a problem that's plagued your administration from day one. Why is that? What do you think the problem has been with homelessness, and what could you have done better? What does the next mayor need to do?
Look, this is very bluntly an area where, along the way, I've recognized things we could have done better. I've said it very publicly.
So what should the next mayor, we're not doing this to play gotcha. What does the next mayor, whoever it is, need to do? What have you learned?
And this is what I've learned, exactly. Homeless outreach. People have a journey as individuals. You know, there but for the grace of God go any of us.
Right.
People, if you talk to homeless folks, they were living a quote-unquote normal life. Something went wrong. They descended down to life on the street. Our job is to bring them right back up. It can be done, but it takes very patient, intense outreach. It takes understanding what each person needs to come in off the streets. Maybe they need mental health services. Maybe they need to have an alcohol or addiction problem addressed. Maybe they need to be reconnected to family. But that patient work by these extraordinary outreach workers, who are really angels, who go out every night, they'll talk to someone 100 times if that's what it takes, actually works. And even during the pandemic, we found we could get homeless people off the streets into shelter, and they've stayed. But it's repeat, repeat, repeat. It's patient, intense, human, work with real heart. And that's what works.
So, Mr. Mayor, we've had two candidates in the last 2 days, Scott Stringer and Catherine Garcia yesterday, talk about putting mental health professionals to work alongside New York Police Department officers. Ms. Garcia suggested having a ride-along, a social worker go along with cops in their car to address whatever the situation would be. I think a police officer would tell you, they get a 911 call, there's a domestic dispute, somebody's waving a gun. They don't have time for a social worker to talk them down. So how does social work, how does mental health fit into the New York Police Department?
Very important question. There's a separation between a situation that could be violent, which is not a place to put a social worker in the middle of for everyone's safety, or a situation where we can handle it with civilians, with healthcare personnel, with social workers. We've now made a major change in New York City already. And the candidates should pay attention to current events a little bit more, to what's already happened, where we now send on emergency calls more and more civilians if we don't think there's going to be a violent situation.
So what is that kind of a call? How do you make that distinction?
If the call comes in, there's someone's with a mental health challenge or crisis, and there's no evidence of violence on the scene or a weapon, then increasingly we'll be sending civilians out to deal with it.
So listen, so last month we had, the numbers were low. I mean, blockbuster numbers this month. U.S. economy added 559,000 jobs. The latest sign of strengthening recovery as vaccinations rise and COVID restrictions ease nationwide. I'm reading this from the Washington Post. Unemployment rate dropped from 6.1 to 5.8%. Let's go to Brian Sullivan. Brian, really bad numbers last month. People were wringing their hands, wondering what changes needed to be made. Much stronger number this month.
Yeah, it is, Joe. And I think it goes to what you're talking about with the mayor. I mean, it's about leisure and hospitality. That was the biggest jump in jobs. I mean, just walk around New York City. New York City does feel back. A month and a half, 2 months ago, restaurants were empty, except maybe a little bit outside. The hotels were mostly empty. That is all coming back. And that is happening nationwide, Joe. And that's one of the reasons 559,000 jobs. OK, a little bit below what Wall Street expected. But forget about the expectation, because the numbers were all over the map. Literally, throw a dart, hit a number. That's the way. Look at the averages over the past 3 months. Yeah, last month was weak. 1.65 million jobs created over the past 3 months. Yeah. Look at the longer term trend. The unemployment rate coming down. And, Joe, the best news of all is that average hourly earnings rose 0.5%. That doesn't sound like a lot, I know, but it is. People that are working are getting paid more to do it, more money in people's pockets.
Amen. Brian, thank you so much. Right. Really appreciate that update. And that really that's two great things happening right now. People are going back to work, but also not only are we getting more people going into the job market, but salaries are going up. And you see some of these national chains are going $15, $16 an hour. I mean, COVID's going to be transformational in a lot of ways, but it seems like wages going up is one way that's happening.
Yeah, and that national number, you see it in plain sight here in New York City. You see it in the restaurants, you see it in the stores opening up, and I think a lot of it, to your point, goes back to getting people vaccinated, letting them feel safe where they go shop and where they eat. The mask guidance from the CDC about a month ago, where they said you don't need the mask inside anymore if you've been vaccinated, et cetera, has played into that. So where do you see New York right now economically in terms of this comeback you're talking about, and what work still needs to be done?
So I think it's really important to start philosophically with the point that we have to put COVID behind us in our minds. You know, it's almost over. It's time to go to the future. That's why we're opening schools full strength in September. No questions asked, no more remote learning. It's time to go back to normal.
And by the way, that's going to be hard. You talk about people's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm still seeing some people in New York. I mean, I've been in Florida, so, like
a little different.
Little laissez-faire down there, but there are still people that are still on that journey. A guy on Twitter said that watching us all together gave him hives.
There's a re-entry anxiety.
I didn't tell him that. I didn't tell him that I hug everybody that comes on set.
That's right.
I tried to grab. He's like, not so fast, Jack. Come on. No, but this is all a journey, isn't it?
It is, and I think sometimes what we fight yesterday's war a little bit too much, because today in New York City, 0.81% COVID positivity, lowest since the beginning of the pandemic and going lower all the time. So let's get our
Can you
minds
guys believe that?
Well,
into the
there's-
fact that
Can you think back-
we're turning the page.
We're
Jonathan,
turning the page.
Rev, all New Yorkers here, can you guys think back to March and April of last year
What we've
and
been through a
what
lot.
you guys
So
have
much.
been through and where the city is now?
Well, the day that there were no COVID deaths, I was talking to somebody, and we're thinking about the refrigerated trucks outside the hospitals in
God.
Queens,
The-
Oh my
field
God.
hospital in Central Park, the graves that were being
The
dug.
constant ambulance sirens. It was the soundtrack to the city, and now that's ended.
But New Yorkers get this victory because we said to New Yorkers, we're going to ask you to sacrifice. We're going to ask you to do something tough. Socially distant, shelter in place, wear a mask, change your life. They did it. And then we said, go out and get vaccinated. And now it's 8.4 million vaccinations have been given in this city.
It's amazing.
So now let's put this in perspective. People did this. Every vaccination is a human being making that decision to show up and a healthcare hero there to give them that vaccination.
Yeah.
That human equation has happened 8.4 million times. So in the end, the victory goes to the people of this city. It didn't happen by magic. And this is what gives me faith in the future of New York City, the strength and resiliency of our people. They fought through everything. They created even in the midst of crisis. And that's who New Yorkers are.